All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. It's great to see all of you. As I mentioned earlier, if you're able to turn on your cameras, we'd far prefer that to black screens. It's much more enjoyable to see your facial expressions and actually engage with people, right? That's why we do Zoom instead of a conference call. So I'm excited to talk about our content today and kind of continue the conversation that we've had around ICHRAs. I'm just curious, by a show of hands, who has gone through the Savvy ICHRA training and become Savvy certified? Okay. That's kind of what I wondered about. I saw maybe three or four hands out of everybody that's been sitting through these trainings. I would just encourage you.
How do we get that?
I had sent out an email on it following I sent the training video that we did with Savvy and then all of the links to get Savvy certified. So if you just go into your email and search for Savvy, Savii, Savvy is one of our ICHRA vendors in addition to Base. And I'll kind of take maybe a quick minute here, and Cav, you may have this in your content too, but maybe a quick recap. So, Base and Savvy are probably the two vendors that we're working with the most regularly right now to implement these individual coverage health reimbursement arrangements. And so, there's no certification that's required with Base, but Savvy does have a certification. It's about 40 or 45 minutes to get through it, but it does a good job of just making sure you have a basic understanding of their platform and how it works. There's a census included in that. There's just a lot of additional information. And so my encouragement would be is if you want to play in this game and work with employers and kind of implement some of the things we're going to talk about today, that you need to get certified with Savvy so that you have that basic understanding. I don't think it's worth your time to just sit on these trainings and then not get certified with the vendors that we're bringing to the table. So that's worth your time to do. And Savvy won't engage with you or your clients until you've kind of been through that. I mean, they'll help you certainly, but they want you to have gone through that as an agent. So I would just encourage you to circle back on that. Before, though, we jump into our ICHRA conversation, we're also going to talk about health savings accounts a little bit today. I did have a couple of updates that I just wanted to share with you. The first one being on Friday of last week, I did send out an email about United Health Group and United Health Care. I just encourage you to utilize those talking points if you're working with clients. We did have a number of agents who reached out and had clients who were concerned about some of the headlines that had been around United Healthcare and United Health Group. I think the biggest thing that I would remind you of is that all four of the major insurance companies in the country are under investigation by the Trump DOJ right now. And so for various things. So I do think they're diving deep and trying to get rid of, fraud, waste, and abuse inside of the system. Ultimately, it's going to create some negative press and some volatility, I think, in the short term. But my hope is on the back end of all of this, consumers have better products, insurance companies are held to higher standards, and it makes our job easier, right? So, but I think it is our job to kind of be the voice of reason within chaos and volatility. Obviously, many of our clients, if they're in Medicare, they can't switch this time of year, so they're kind of are where they are. I'm very comfortable with United Healthcare. I'm also very comfortable with Humana, Aetna, and Anthem or Elevance, Priority Health, Blue Cross and Blue Shield. They've all been in the news for various things over the last couple of months, but they all continue to, be strong carriers. And I think the beauty of what we do is we are a choice model, right? So one carrier having some headwinds to work their way through, it doesn't diminish our opportunity and kind of what we're doing. So I just wanted to make sure you guys had read that. If you have questions or have clients that have questions or concerns, I'd certainly be happy to help you navigate that. I also wanted to remind everybody that following the holiday weekend on Tuesday of next week, we are hosting a large all-day life insurance training in Elkhart. And we're starting it at 9:30 to give some of you that are traveling time to get there. We'll run from 9:30 to probably 4:30. We're going to have kind of a morning breakfast brunch kind of catered in, and then we'll have lunch brought in as well. Dallas Richens is going to be coming in with a lot of our carrier partners and just doing additional training on life insurance. I think this is a huge opportunity that we have not yet capitalized on. I think that each of us will be able to take some things away from that, and hopefully it'll jumpstart some life insurance sales. So because of that training, we are not going to host agent development training. This session will not happen next Tuesday because we've got about 70 people that are going to be in that training. If you haven't RSVP'd or you decided that you'd like to attend that training, please reach out to Megan Smith, my executive assistant. She's the one who's running point on that and just making sure that we've got all of the RSVPs accounted for. I did send out an email to people who had not yet RSVP yesterday. And so if you want to get added to the list, we can still add you to the list. We just need to know for food and seating and things like that. So wanted to make sure on that. A few other quick updates. I was on a TVP call this morning around technology, and we do have some things that are evolving and changing and should be updated in the next couple of weeks here. One is we are working with a new vendor on our agent marketing websites. And so there will be some upgrades in the next week to 10 days around our agent marketing websites, which will be nice. I know some of you, especially newer agents, have also begun to engage with Yext and local listings, the Google local listings. We are in a little bit of development with both of those vendors. And so they paused things moving forward if you're a brand new agent. And I know a few of you have had some heartburn around trying to get those things done. They kind of pushed a pause for a moment. And we're hoping that in the next week or two, we'll be able to reopen up those avenues for you to continue to work with Yext, your local listings, your Facebook business pages, all of that stuff. The vendors that we're using are being upgraded on that. So I expect some enhancements around that. For those of you who may be going to Austin, Texas in June, we are going to be walking through a detailed overview of VanillaSoft. We're going to have multiple sessions around the new CRM that we're rolling out. It looks to me like piloting is and testing is happening right now. Through the month of June and July, we're going to be testing things and looking at an all-out launch date in August. So better than September or October, but there is a lot that has to happen to pull all this together. And I think we're all going to be very, very impressed with the new capabilities of the new CRM. And you'll be able to see a glimpse of that if you're in Austin. Coming away from Austin, we're going to have a lot of trainings and webinars and things that you'll be able to jump on to get familiar with that. So I did want to make sure and mention that. Other than that, I don't think I have any other announcements today, so I really want to focus on the content that Steve and I have put together. One thing before I turn things over to Steve for a bit that I want to do is I want to make sure that you guys do understand that we do have these two vendors that we work with when it comes to these individual coverage health reimbursement arrangements. And I continue to see this as an enormous opportunity. I had a call a week and a half ago with Dan Garrison, our president, just to talk through what we can do to better embrace this opportunity. As you've heard in the last couple of trainings that we've done around ICHRAs, and that ICHRAs, individual coverage health reimbursement arrangements, ICHRA. But there is a mass migration beginning to happen. Many of our ICHRA vendors and partners believe that over the next few years, more than half of small businesses will gravitate to this particular model. And so while we've done a lot of training with the different vendors and what an ICHRA is and that kind of stuff over the last couple of weeks, today we really want to focus on practical application and really saying, okay, how does this work? And what are Steve and I seeing in the markets that we serve? Because we have done probably as many of these ICHRAs as anybody on the call right now. And I just want to start off by clarifying, when we think about our two vendors that we have to administer ICHRAs, we have Base and we have Savvy. Base is a reimbursement model. And what that means is if we set up an ICHRA with Base, each of the employees that are a part of that company have to pay their portion of the insurance and then get reimbursed within about 48 hours for that cost. But it does create a situation where the consumer has to pay something up front and then get reimbursed for their expense through the ICHRA. Savvy is a little bit different. They actually work with a series of escrow accounts, and they can set it up so that an employer can payroll deduct the premiums and the cost of the health insurance and makes it feel much more like group insurance might. And so as I kind of think about these two vendors, I think it depends on what kind of an employer you're working with as to which vendor is going to make the most sense. If it's a small company with 5, 10, 15, 20 employees, and they've never offered group insurance, and they're trying to keep it simple, and they just want to provide something where they've typically provided nothing when it comes to group benefits, I think Base and that reimbursement model might be a very good solution for them because there's no track record, there's no understanding from the employees. It's all brand new, and Base is going to be a little bit less expensive for the employer because it's the reimbursement model. Savvy is, I think, going to be better positioned for organizations who maybe have group insurance and they've hit a point where they just cannot afford to offer group insurance any longer. And they're literally transitioning from traditional group insurance to an ICHRA model. I feel like Savvy is better positioned to be able to make that feel more like real insurance, to do payroll deductions, to pay the premiums on behalf of the employees. It's a little bit more, robust infrastructure. And because of that, the cost to the employer is going to be higher with Savvy in most situations than what it is with Base. So I think it depends on what you're trying to accomplish and what type of a company you're working with as to whether or not you should lean towards Base or you should lean towards Savvy. Base is simpler, Base is less expensive, Base is more for that company who's never done anything. Savvy would be a little bit more robust, a little bit more complex, more expensive, and potentially something that would feel more like real group insurance if you're making that transition for employers. It's kind of interesting as some of you have been out there engaging with Small Business America and having some of these conversations. Steve and I talked about this in depth yesterday that I think for us, chasing groups that have traditionally offered group insurance and helping them transition to ICHRA is more of a complex transaction and it's more difficult. And quite frankly, a lot of these employers who have traditionally offered group insurance, um, they have to hit a certain pain threshold from a cost perspective before they're willing to blow up their group and move employees to individual plans and set up some sort of a pathway on ICHRA to be able to help reimburse them or create those opportunities. I talked to a lot of employers who are very frustrated with the cost of their group insurance, but they're not yet in enough pain to be willing to blow it up and do something completely different, right? So I really feel like our initial opportunity when we think about this is not reaching out to companies that have group insurance. It's more isolating and finding those small companies that have not traditionally offered anything but would like to. I think those opportunities are where we need to get our feet wet. There are thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of small businesses that are out there that would like to do something for their employees, but they're not doing anything right now. And I think that's a place to really start. And I think about how we find those people. It's through walk and talks. It's through walking into Small Business America or working with our existing clients that are small business owners. I think that's a really, really good place to start if you're just looking to get into the ICHRA business. Again, to recap what we've talked about in the past weeks, I think the biggest benefits of us pursuing this ICHRA model is that this is the time of year where many people do not have special enrollment periods because they have not had a qualifying event. If we can work with an employer and get an employer to set up an ICHRA, just the launch or the implementation of that ICHRA creates a year-round special enrollment period for people in that group to buy insurance in the moment when it's launched, or for new employees coming to work for that company to buy insurance at any point during the year. So many employers are looking at this and saying, even if I don't offer traditional group insurance, setting up an inexpensive ICHRA or something that's not going to cost me as an employer a lot of money. The biggest thing I'm doing is I'm opening up a window mid-year for all my employees to go buy insurance. There's a 60-day window for all the employees once that ICHRA is launched. And maybe even more importantly, as I hire employees throughout the year, they have that special enrollment period because I'm offering an ICHRA and they're gaining access to it for the first time to go enroll in an individual plan. So those were just kind of some maybe recaps of things that we've talked about in the past and some ideas that I wanted to share with you guys before we turn things over to Cav. Before we let Cav kind of take over, are there questions you guys would like to ask about anything we've talked about to this point? Nada? Sweet. All right, Cav, I just gave you hosting privileges or sharing privileges. So if you want to take it from here for a little bit, that would be great.
All right. So what I'm going to share with you guys is a presentation that I have put together using some compliance slides from Base, from Savvy, and even from Health Markets. And so the whole idea behind this is if we walk into a business, we find someone who's interested, they want to schedule a time, when we go see them, having something that we can, a little presentation we can go through to kind of explain how an ICHRA works, to see if it's even something they want to do. I mean, guys, that's the thing. Our job is not to go in and convince these people to do an ICHRA. Our job is to let people know what an ICHRA does. And if they want to respond to it, fine. If not, move on to the next person. Okay. And like I said, I agree with Silas. If you're walking in and most of the people you're dealing with already have groups in place, that's a tough one, man, because again, they have to make something new. But if you walk into a business, which again, a lot of them that don't provide group, the reason they don't is they just can't afford it, and they don't know there's any alternatives. And so that's really what we're looking to do, but we kind of got to show this to them. So I'm just going to kind of show you what I put together, and then we'll, if you guys like it, we'll get it to you. So first thing I do is I have a slide that just introduces health markets. This came right from Health Markets small business slide, but again, we've been around since 1984. I like this: nationwide strength, but local service, trusted A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, and then we deal with a wide range of insurance companies, but we provide innovative solutions that meet the health and financial needs of employers, individuals, and families. So it kind of lets you know we help all this, okay? What makes health markets different? First of all, we provide some innovative cost-saving solutions, which is the ICHRA, or H.S.A.s, as we're going to talk about. But the real benefit that we're bringing to the table, if they're interested, is this face-to-face employee advisory model. This idea that as a business owner, you're no longer going to have to figure out what kind of health plan to give to people. We're the experts at that. We're going to custom design this around their needs and their budget. So what is an ICHRA? A lot of people call this the 401k of health insurance. It's a tax advantage health benefit that allows employers to reimburse employees for their individual health insurance premiums. It was established by federal regulations in 2020, and it's available to businesses of all sizes. Now, why ICHRA is the future of health insurance? The U.S. federal government projects that by 2028, 800,000 employers with 11 million members will enroll in an ICHRA. ICHRA grew by 350% from 2020 when it started through 2023. Employer satisfaction: 94% of employers using ICHRAs report satisfaction with the model. And employee choice: employees benefit from the ability to select plans tailored to their needs, which aligns with a broader trend towards personalized benefits. This customization is seen as a competitive advantage in a tight job market. Okay, so here's why employers love ICHRA. Number one, budget control. Biggest problem that most small businesses have that provide group is every year the premiums go up. So an ICHRA provides fixed, predictable monthly cost. Administrative simplicity: no more managing complex group plans. Flexibility: you can create a custom employee classes with varying allowance amounts. There's tax advantages: all reimbursements are tax deductible to the business. There's no minimum participation requirements, unlike traditional group plans. And like Silas says, that creates a year-round special enrollment, allows employees to get insurance at any time of the year. Now, here's some examples of how companies can design this. The first thing is, here's the most common utilized classes. You can have a class for salaried, hourly, full-time, part-time, seasonal, or you can do what's called an age-banded contribution, where if a company with employees in a single class decide to offer an ICHRA to reimburse individuals' health insurance premiums, the employer sets the contribution amounts based on the employee age to account for higher premium costs for older employees, assuring compliance with the 3-to-1 ratio. So an example may be, I'm going to give $200 a month to the people in their 20s. I'm going to give $300 a month for people in their 30s, 400 and 40s, and then 600 for someone in their 50s or above. And that is compliant. So again, what you're kind of doing here is you're just showing people examples of how they can set this up. Okay. Now, why employees love ICHRA? Plan choice. They can select the coverage that meets their needs. It's portable. They can keep it if they change jobs. It's transparent. Clear understanding of employer contribution. There's tax advantages. Receive their reimbursements tax-free. Gives them provider freedom where they can choose the doctors and networks they prefer. and there's customization, add family members or additional coverage as needed, which means they can get vision, dental, life insurance. They can add their spouse on there if they want to. So here are the ideal ICHRA candidates. Number one, companies frustrated with their annual premium increases, businesses with employees in multiple states, organizations with diverse workforce needs, employers currently offering no health benefits, companies looking to replace their group plans, and businesses with part-time or hourly workers. Now, I agree with Silas. I'm looking for the people right here. Because here's why. When you're dealing with people who are frustrated with their increases, they're looking to replace group, there's two problems with that right now. Number one, you're having to convince someone to do something that they've never done before, and it's a tough sell. Unless, again, you get a 400% rate increase. I mean, I have a trucking company where it's like the guy was like, I am done. I'm out of the insurance business. Well, then let's look at this. You'll find a few of those. But the other problem with replacing groups right now is you may be screwing some of their employees if they've had health challenges and met their deductible or stuff. Because when you start the ICHRA, it all starts over. So if I actually find a group that's interested in doing this, I'm probably going to push them to a January 1st start date, unless their group ends in August, okay? Because then it's all starting over anyway. But when you've got someone who's not providing anything, then we don't need to worry about that. So that's why this is the market we want to shoot for first, because guys, we have no competition. We're not competing against anything. When we start dealing with people who are already providing groups and everything, now we've got to compete with their mindset. We've got to compete with whether or not people have met their deductibles. It just creates some challenges. I'm not saying to walk away from those businesses. I'm saying maybe those businesses turn into a not now. Let's have this go to, January 1st or when your plan ends. But these employers that are not offering anything, but they'd like to help some way, that's how you can really accelerate this right now. So when you're showing this to an employer, once you get done doing that, you just ask a simple question. Which one of these affects your business? Is it the rising premium cost? Is it the burden? Is it the one size fits all? Is the participation rate? So those are all with people that currently offer group. Or do you have a desire to provide some type of benefits? So for the people who have nothing, that's what's going to be their pain point. So again, if you kind of think of the pain funnel, what I've done so far is I've taken someone who is well, and I made them sick by just going through why employers like ICHRA, why employees. But this is the critical question. Which one of these affects you the most? And now all of a sudden you've got that pain that you can start using to overcome objections. Because again, one of the things I learned from Sandler, and Sandler knows this, whenever there's an objection, go back to the pain. That way, you're not convincing people to do anything. You're just taking them back to the problem they told you they had. And now it's their decision whether or not they want to fix that problem. Okay. They're not deciding to work with me. They're not deciding if they want to do an ICHRA. They're deciding, do I want to continue to have this problem? Okay. So here is how health markets can help businesses. Because I think a lot of people right now that are going into the business, they're only thinking about the first option, which is helping the business establish a fully funded ICHRA. Okay. But there's three other ways in we can help them. The other one is establish a non-funded ICHRA to create that year-round open enrollment. And so there are some, and I have a couple of clients that they don't pay anything towards their health plan. They just pay the $600-700 a year just so when their employees come in, I can get them health insurance year-round. Another one is we can contribute towards an HSA, whether they do an ICHRA or not. Okay. There are some people that would say, hey, I don't really want to get in the premium paying business, but I will put money in an HSA. And I think Silas is going to talk about the advantage of this because, it creates a two-payer system into a three-payer system. And then finally, here's where most of my small business relationships are. And I think Silas will agree with this too. we create a referral partnership to help the employees find coverage. In other words, we work with businesses that they're not doing anything. They're not contributing to an ICHRA. They're not doing an HSA. It's just when a new business comes in, they're sending them to us, and we're kind of their human resource people. And all you're doing is you're creating this referral network or this center of influence where, when they have a new employee come in and they say, do you provide insurance? No, I don't, but I'm going to provide you access to a professional who will help you get there. Okay. And then finally, the next steps are, which way do you think health markets can help your business? Do you want to do a fully funded ICHRA? Do you just want to create one for special enrollment? Do you want to do HSA? Or do you just want me to be a referral partner? Which one do you want to do? Now, if they say they want to do some sort of ICHRA, whether they fund it or just have it for the open enrollment, or an HSA benefit program, well, then I'm going to introduce you to our benefits administrator. In this case, it's going to be BASE. They'll contact you. They'll explain exactly how to set up your program. But in any situation, if they want to work with us, I will gather your employees' information and I'll meet with your employees to design their coverage. And now it's just, where do you want to go from here? Okay. So this is a nice little presentation. It takes 15, 20 minutes to establish if they want to do any of the four. Because again, in all four situations, guys, who's writing the health insurance? We are. Okay. So this is a non-threatening backdoor approach into getting ACA clients. We're just establishing, do you want to do a full-blown ACA or ICHRA? Do you want to just have an ICHRA for a year-round open enrollment? Do you want to contribute to an HSA? Or do you just want me to help your employees when they come? And then we just kind of hook them up with BASE. And you know what? The way that I do it is I figure out exactly what they want to do. And then I call BASE and I just tell them this is what they want to do. BASE will contact them, get it set up. That once it's set up, I just go back in now that I know what they're going to do. And I start writing the employees based on what the situation is. I don't go to BASE and have BASE figure it out, because sometimes, sorry, they may mess it up. Okay. And again, in most situations, guys, I'm actually almost talking them out of paying for any health insurance. I want them to get out of the health insurance business. And if you're going to fund anything, fund the HSA. Let the government help pay their premium. You help pay their medical bills. And so most of the people that I deal with in this situation, they either have an ICHRA just for the open enrollment, but it's $100 a month or something very unaffordable. And if the client will get an HSA approved plan, it's their choice. They'll contribute $200 to $300 to the HSA. Other than that, get out of the claims paying business or get out of the premium paying business. Get out of the deciding which health plan they want. Let me do all that for them. And if you want to help pay their medical bills while the government helps pay their premium. And I'm telling you, a lot of businesses that don't provide anything, they find that really, really attractive. So that's basically the little presentation I put together. So Silas, this is the first time you've seen it. What are your comments on this?
Well, I think it's great. Will you go back to it a second? Sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I want to go back to one of your slides. I think it's great. I think it's simple. I think it's something that we can use. It's a guide. I recognize some of these slides from other.
They're all compliant. I mean, guys, I just took other slides. The only thing that's not compliant is what we can do, which is this one right here, which again, that's kind of compliant too, because that's all we can really do. And we're not talking about a health plan. We're not talking about an insurance company. So,
right. So,
which one did you want to go to?
one thing I just wanted to comment on here, I do think I want to make sure you guys understand there is a big difference if you're working with a company that has less than 50 employees versus a company that has more than 50 employees. Okay. And I think the majority of what I would encourage you to get your feet wet in, and the majority of the business we're going to do is under 50, right? Those are what I call the micro business owners. And I think it's important to understand that if an employer has less than 50 employees, there is no federal obligation or requirement for them to offer affordable insurance or group insurance in any way. There's no penalty for not offering it. And so that kind of opens up a window where these employers with less than 50 employees, they can open the ICHRA and it doesn't have to be deemed affordable in any way. Now, if you're dealing with a company that has more than 50 employees, it's a totally different world because companies that have more than 50 full-time equivalent employees or FTEs, they are required by federal law to offer group insurance or affordable insurance in some way. And if they don't do that, they are hit with a penalty at the end of the year by the federal government for not offering affordable coverage. So typically, when you see a company that has more than 50 employees and they don't want to be in the group insurance game any longer, and they're transitioning to an ICHRA, how they build that ICHRA is going to be much different because they want to build that ICHRA in a way that they are reimbursing a much higher amount to each employee so that they can meet the affordability requirements to not have to pay a penalty for not offering insurance. And so the way that ICHRAs are built really is quite different whether it's under 50 employees or over 50. Under 50, they can build it however they want and there's no affordability requirements, and they can just set it up like we've been talking about with a very minuscule amount of reimbursement. But if you get over 50, now it becomes a little bit more complex. That's probably where you want to work with Savvy and or Base, because what they can do is they can help you determine, like, for this group, their ages, their income, how much does the employer need to reimburse through the ICHRA to make it affordable so that they are not penalized by the federal government for not offering affordable coverage. So that's a big difference there. And that's where I think where we want to gravitate to is the under 50. If you get into something and the company has more than 50 and they're thinking about blowing up their group insurance, like, you need to get a little bit more like subject matter experts involved in that conversation. So does that make sense? Do you guys have questions about that at all?
Hi, Silas. I actually do have a question about that. What happens if you start an ICHRA with somebody that has under 40 employees, but then they start to grow a little bit and now they have more? Do we have to do something kind of like in the middle to switch them up, or how does that work?
Yes. So it's the number's 50, not 40. Just you said 40, so I just want to make sure I'm clear on that. It's
So
50.
I guess what I was meaning is, like, when you set up the ICHRA, they had 40, but then they hired more people. So now in the middle of that year, now they're over the 50. Is that making sense what I'm saying?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. So as companies grow, they may need to change their ICRA over time. I will say though, it's and I would work with Savvy or Base to determine exactly when they need to make those changes. It's not typically going to be in the middle of a year because typically what they're looking at is the previous tax year and how many FTEs they actually had, how many full-time equivalent employees they actually had on the books in the previous year. So it's not something where all of a sudden they hit 50 in July and boom, everything has to change. It's probably going to be an adjustment that's going to be made for the next calendar year or tax year. And I would work with Savvy or Base to figure out exactly how that needs to transition. But it would be different if you've got a
Cool.
company that's growing. And some
Okay.
companies that are growing are going to deal with that no matter what, whether they're
Yeah.
offering an ICHRA or not, whether they're offering group insurance or not. That is something as companies reach that 50 mark that they have to understand is, once you get over that and you're over that for a year, okay, now you've really got to start thinking about, am I going to offer group insurance or am I going to offer ICHRA? Am I going to do something to avoid paying the penalty that I could get assessed by the federal government for not offering affordable coverage?
Okay, cool. Can I ask one more question? I have one more question. So this has to do with businesses that have employees in multiple states. Is there anything easy for us as the agent, other than just going out and getting licensed in that state, to be able to assist that employee as well?
That's all you need to do is you have to be licensed in the state where they're at, and then you
And
just,
and
because you're just getting them in an individual plan, so you just got to be licensed
Okay.
in the state they live.
But you also, in your Quote Connect system, I'm pretty certain that you can quote ACA rates in every state with every carrier, regardless of whether or not you're licensed and appointed. So,
Okay.
like, if you're doing some preliminary work for an employer, you're trying to put some numbers together or any of that, you have access to the data. You just can't execute the enrollment and get paid for it. Can't legally execute the enrollment until after you're licensed and appointed with the carriers in that state that you're going to be selling.
Hey
Okay,
guys,
cool.
one of the
Thank
things
you.
I want to stress is a lot of us, again, we get the idea that more's better. and we're looking at hunting elephants instead of shooting squirrels right now. If you start talking to businesses that are more than 15, 20 employees, you're going to be spending a lot of time for something that may or may not happen. Focus, I mean, if you find it, yes, okay, but I mean, focus on the body shops, the hairdressers, the vape stores, the Subway franchise owners. That those are the little businesses that we want to become extremely proficient at. And then when we hit one of these bigger ones, all right, we'll get base, we'll get savvy involved and get the help we need. Just like if we find a big life case for a, a $5 million buy sell. I ain't figuring that out. I'm calling Dallas Richens or someone and saying, hey, fix this. But a lot of us, when we start thinking about this, again, just from the conversations I've had with people, is we're bumping into, I think, bigger businesses than we kind of should right now until we really get a grasp on this. Now, we're going to eventually get there to where we're going to be really proficient at this no matter how many employees they have. But I will tell you, when you start talking the 50 and above, that's where the group brokers are going to have to start going. But they're not walking into the small bit. They don't want to deal with that, with the little stuff. They're going to be looking for the people 50 and older. I mean, 50 employees or more. We need to be the ones that take care of the 50 and under, because again, the brokers aren't going to be going there. Would you agree, Silas?
I also think those big companies, I mean, you think about it, not many of you have the staff and the infrastructure to deal with 80 or 100 or 150 or 200 enrollments in a 30 to 60-day window, right? Like that's a big deal. Like if you run into something like that and a lot of work. So I totally agree with Cav that like getting into something, these smaller companies are where it's at. And looking at Cav's slide here too, I want to just, the first option there is establish a fully funded ICHRA. That would typically be for companies with more than 50 employees who need to meet the affordability requirements, and they've got to like pay a significant amount. And in those situations, most of their employees are going to take the employer stipend. They're not going to take any federal subsidies because the employer has to heavily fund this, right? And that's still a benefit for those employers because it's a fixed amount. Each employee can custom design their plan. They're getting out of the group insurance, all of those types of things. The second option, establish the non-funded ICHRA to create a year-round open enrollment. We're going to be using that much more in the under 50 market and potentially coupling it with the HSAs. So that's one thing that I've done with a lot of companies is we set up, the ICHRA to create the special enrollment period for the employees in the moment and create that open enrollment period or that special enrollment period year-round for new employees coming into the group. And maybe it's a very low-level funding through the ICHRA because we want the employees to be able to go get the government subsidies because they're more blue collar, lower income, and there's heavy subsidies available. And then the employer says, hey, we're going to bring in an HSA and we'll help fund an HSA. Maybe it's $100 a month, $200 a month, $300 a month, whatever the employer is comfortable with. So it becomes a very fixed expense for the employer. And as premiums rise next year, they don't have to raise their HSA contribution. So it becomes, what was once a very variable expense. I mean, I'm in the small group market. I probably have more small groups on the books than anybody else in our territory. And we're seeing 12 to 15% rate increases annually on most of these small groups. And so that is something that is not sustainable for most employers long term. And as I mentioned previously, we had a small group of 5 people at the end of last year. They came to us because they had a 500% rate increase. Their individual premiums went from $500 a month to $2,500 a month per person on the group. And they're like, we're done. Like, there's no way. So they had to figure something else out. And that's where some of these solutions came in. So there are some companies that hit those pain points. And then no matter what you're doing, whether you're helping them with the ICHRA, you're funding the HSA, creating that referral partnership to help the employees find coverage, like that's what we're going to do no matter what we do, right? We do have some employers, to Cav's point, where they don't set up an ICHRA, they don't fund an HSA, but they just say, hey, I got a guy that'll help you when the time's right. So that can be the relationship that you develop as well. It's just a matter of meeting them where they want to be met and helping them. So do we have any other questions before we transition over to the HSA conversation?
There are a couple questions on here on the chat. So let me see. Okay, okay.
Yeah,
We'll
we
be
could.
getting this slideshow after the meeting, probably. I've talked with the group about blowing up their group plan, and the idea of leading a PPO plan for the marketplace HMO has been a pain point. You're right. So they got to decide. Do you want to stay in the PPOs and pay the rates, or you're going to have to move? Guys, we don't have to convince these people to do anything.
Right.
We just have to take them back to they're going to have to do something different or keep paying the rate increases.
Right.
I'm sorry. Okay.
I don't think we have to. I agree with you, Gav. We don't have to convince people, right? Eventually they're going to hit a pain point where they can't do it anymore, and we want to be the place where they land if and when that happens. But stop like arguing with people or fighting people or convincing people. We don't have to do that.
Right. Right. Does the ICHRA work for employees who are Medicare eligible? Yes. My experience is group agents are countering my efforts to keep them with a group plan 0-3 net category. You're right, Randy. They're gonna fight you. That's why it's a bad. If we're in places that don't have group, we have no competition. If we're going against people with groups, we have competition. And usually with people that are more versed at this than we are, because they're doing something they're very comfortable with. We're doing something that's brand new. We're probably going to lose that 99% of the time unless there's a 500% increase. Okay. That's where the group comes in. Okay. Love these slides. Creation of a good selling point. Thank you, Veronica. That the costs vary in price depending on how many employees at the only once the year OEP. Yeah, you're going to find out that it's probably about $600 to $700 a year just to do the non-funded ICHRA. I think it's what, $250, $350 to set it up, and then at base has for the first 5 employees, it's like $30 a month. So figure about, I tell people it's going to be about $600 to $700 a year. You totally write it off as a business expense, and some businesses are willing to do that. Okay. What is in it for small business owners that don't have to provide insurance? That's a good question, Cleo. It's employee attraction and retention.
Yeah.
That's why they're doing this, because when people are hiring in or staying, they want to have some sort of benefits. When you work for an employer that doesn't offer anything, that's what the employees think. My employer doesn't give me anything. Where if they give access to HSA funds, or if they give access to you'll be surprised on how many employees look at having access to us as a benefit from the employer.
And the employer pays nothing for that. I mean, if they're not setting up an ICHRA and they're not funding an HSA and they're just giving them access to a trusted expert when it comes to navigating this, like I have companies, and sometimes you got to help that company like build their story, right? And spin this in the right way when they're hiring and attracting. Instead of when you're hiring and interviewing somebody, instead of saying, no, we don't offer group benefits, say, yeah, we do actually have a benefit package. I'd be happy to explain to you how it works. It's a little different from large group insurance, but we do help our employees with that. And sometimes that just gives them an edge to be able to attract and retain those employees when they might have otherwise lost them. Casey said, I seem to remember, oh, sorry, it jumped on me here. I seem to remember Savvy saying that the tax benefit would not be the same for an S Corp. Is this something to be aware of on the front end, or can either of you speak to that?
Yeah, I think they can. Randy, I think you brought this up before too. So can you chime in? I think there's something where if you're an S Corp, you can write something off on the individual tax return.
I think the way that it has to be done is, yeah, I only have a sprinkling company where this was done. The employee spouse ended up getting the ACA plan set up with her, and then because he's the president of the company, is a dependent on her policy. That's the way that I understood an S Corp would set it up. Does that make sense, Silas? Or
Yeah, possibly. I just don't know. I would be calling Savvy on that.
Yeah.
I'm not certain.
But again, guys, my whole philosophy on that is I am not a tax professional. I am not a financial planner. I'm an insurance agent, so I can tell you how it works. If there's any questions like that, I'm punting to the experts because I don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah. Kevin said, it's my understanding after studying my own tax return this year that a member can either take a subsidy or have an ICHRA, but not both. You're kind of right on that. They can't get a government subsidy and an employer subsidy. They're not going to be able to take both. It's going to be one or the other, right? If the company has more than 50 employees and they're offering an affordable ICHRA, so they're giving a good chunk of money to each of their employees to the point where it's deemed affordable, nobody in that group is eligible for a government subsidy, and it's completely employer funded. If it's a company with less than 50 employees, that affordability is not a thing. So they can do a greatly diminished, they can still open an ICHRA and do a greatly diminished, maybe 50 or $100 a month, with the idea that the employees are probably not going to take advantage of what the employer is giving them, other than leveraging the ICHRA to create the special enrollment period needed to get coverage mid-year, right? So that's when we talk about the second option on Cav's screen here, establish a non-funded ICHRA to create the year-round open enrollment. So these companies with less than 50 employees, most of them are going to say, I don't want to heavily fund this. I just want to create it so it exists so that all my employees can actually pick up coverage here mid-year, number one. And number two, we have that open or that special enrollment period year-round as new employees are hired, because they're gaining access to an ICHRA for the first time, and that creates a special enrollment period for them to go buy a marketplace plan. But you're 100% right, Kevin. They can't. I don't think there's a situation where they can do both.
Well, and I want to add to this. So guys, where would we do a fully funded ICHRA under 50 employees? Maybe you work with a law firm where all the people are attorneys and they're not going to qualify for any subsidies. Well, then yeah, the business may want to give $300, $400, $500 a month. Okay.
Yep.
But if you have a business where most of the employees are going to qualify for subsidies, that's where I would tell the employer to get out of the way. And the biggest reason why you want them to get out of the way is most of the time the business owner is only going to reimburse the employee. If there's a family involved here where they could get a lot of subsidies because they got a family of 5 and the business owner is giving them $400, but the federal government will give them $900, but now they can't get it. That's where you have to have these conversations on telling these people, look, you don't want to pay premium in most cases. Unless your people don't get a government subsidy, then help pay premium. Instead, why don't you pay an HSA if your employees are willing to take a qualified plan? But if you've got that family of 5 with 3 kids and they want a traditional copay plan, well, then you don't have to provide anything. Guys, it's just giving them this kind of advice where they're going to start trusting you, because it's not one option. I mean, Maggie ran into someone that talked to their group broker, and the group's like, group's the only thing you can do. Well, now all of a sudden, when they see there's 4 things they can do, they're going to start distrusting their group broker. Okay, so
Group brokers, including myself as a group broker, are lazy. I'm not a lazy person, but I will tell you, when it comes to the 20 or 25 groups that I have on the plate, every year when they get their renewal, it's a hell of a lot easier for me to say, oh, it's only 8% or 9%. Are you comfortable with that? Do you just want to let this roll? That's a far simpler process than me saying, hey, let me go shop this for you, right? Because now I've got to get a new census. I've got to go out and get rates. I've got to compare plans. Like, we got to potentially move them, which creates, friction inside the organization. Or maybe changing deductibles, or changing plans. People are unhappy. Like, so I will just tell you, from a group broker perspective, group brokers are kind of lazy, especially on these smaller groups. And, I think about Randy's situation. I think you pressured the group broker in those situations to go shop it for them. See if there's a better solution. And maybe they shaved a couple of points by switching to a different carrier, or going from, fully funded to level funded. I mean, there's different things that group brokers can do to pull some levers to maybe pull a few percentage points off and keep them for another year. But I also think that eventually these small groups like that, that group broker, they're fighting a process that's going to eventually fail, right? These rates are eventually going to get to a point where a lot of these small companies just can't do it any longer. And so I think there's still value in planting those seeds and becoming that trusted expert. So, Randy said S corps are generally owned more than 2% and therefore are self-employed and therefore cannot participate in the ICHRA. So you're talking about the actual owners of the S corp. Kevin said many but not all group brokers are offering only one carrier. Their annual interaction, if any, is here's your rate increase. Do you want it or not? After that, they've got nothing. Agreed. And Veronica says financial advisors and realtor brokerages are 2 places I found that no one qualified for government subsidy and did a fully funded ICHRA. Sure. And that's very
Yeah, you're gonna run into those, but one of the things for especially for you newer reps, Health Markets offers group insurance. Most of our reps don't touch it within a 10-foot pole because it's a pain in the butt.
Right.
For
And
what you have to put in versus what you get out, I would much rather go find employers that don't offer anything, because now I can do ACA, life, dental, group, supplemental, and it's just an easier fix because I'm not competing against anything.
I will tell you guys, the only reason I do group insurance personally is to provide a quoting outlet for those of you who are getting in that are competing with group for things like ICHRA. And I pay Sandra to manage it for me.
Yeah, Silas, you don't do it. Sandra does.
I don't do it. Correct. So I pay somebody else. And I made that decision a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, where all of our top agents wanted to get out of it. Derek Mabry called me last year and he's like, hey, can I just give you all the groups that I have? I don't even want them anymore. We don't make a ton of money on them. They're a pain in the butt. And it's just, I think for those of you who give big eyes and say, oh, I want to be in the group market, I would tell you, don't even think about it unless you know you're going to be executing at least one new group a month, like 12 a year. It's the same thing. You got to execute transactions to become proficient. And if you're not doing it well, you can really get yourself in hot water with employers and compliance and all those types of things. So for most of our agents, top agents included, most of them don't even want to dabble in it because we've got such a huge opportunity in the individual space, in the Medicare space, and cross-selling. So,
well, and the agents nationwide that do participate in group, they have a big staff to handle. They're running it like a group agency. I mean, who's the guy down in Texas that just tears this up every year?
well, Matt Gardner is probably the biggest
Matt Gardner.
customer service infrastructure because, when you're dealing with you've got 1,000 employees on group insurance, you've got a lot of service work that has to be done with those employees too. As they come off the group, they go on the group, they have questions, they have claim issues, all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna pivot over for just a few minutes and I want to just talk high level about health savings accounts. So I'm gonna share and you backed out of the sharing, so good. So let me get over to my presentation. So I am and continue to be a huge fan of health savings accounts, whether we're talking about them in the reference of ICHRAs or just individual policies. I'll tell you over 90% of my personal clients who are on individual plans are in HSA approved insurance policies. And so I want to just walk through some slides here, and I'm happy to share these slides afterwards as well as Cav's slideshow. But why do HSA plans make sense? First of all, they're often some of the lower premium plans. In most situations, they actually have the lowest out-of-pocket maximum of any plan in the marketplace. It allows consumers, when you're in an HSA approved plan, and all that means is the plan meets certain specs that are set by the federal government. If the plan is HSA approved, the government says you are now legally able to set up a health savings account separate from the health insurance, and you're able to push money into that account each year, and you can write off whatever you deposit into that account on your taxes at the end of the year. So it is a way to set aside tax-free money to pay future medical bills. And the beauty of those HSAs is that employers can also contribute to them, as long as the combined contribution between the employer and the employee does not exceed the annual maximum limits. Once you're put money into a health savings account, it's literally a triple tax advantage. You can you write off the money as you put it in. You can achieve tax-free growth on the money when it's inside the health savings account, and you can actually invest that money. The other thing that I think people don't think about is if you're helping someone with their medical insurance and they are qualifying for government subsidies to help pay for the health insurance, whatever money they put into a health savings account, not only are they setting aside tax-free money to pay future medical bills with, but they're also lowering their adjusted gross income by the amount of money that they put into the health savings account, which helps them qualify for a higher government subsidy. So you're intentionally and legally suppressing their income by making that HSA contribution, which is going to cause them to be eligible for a higher government subsidy because their adjusted gross income is actually, lower than what it otherwise would be. And then you can use the money that's in the health savings account to pay for many medical expenses, to include Medicare premiums and long-term care insurance premiums later in life. So I have clients that I've been coaching on this for 15 or 20 years, myself included, where we're max funding that health savings account every single year, and it's just growing. We're investing that money. It's growing completely tax-free. I have clients now that are hitting age 65 and have some, 80, 100, $125,000 sitting in their health savings account. What a wonderful way to walk into retirement with a bucket of tax-free money waiting to be spent down on premiums on out-of-pocket medical expenses, right? So it really allows them to plan for the future. There are several different HSA administrators that I have worked with that I would recommend. I would say Fidelity is probably at the top of the heap. They're who I use personally. HSAbank.com is another vendor that I was with a while back that was pretty decent. And then Base 105. If you are if you are working with a company and a company wants to contribute money into a health savings account, Base will administer those HSAs on behalf of each employee. So Base has a really good platform for employers to use. So this is just some snippets that I took from the Fidelity website. Why Fidelity? The big things are there are no annual account fees. There's no minimum to invest, and they have the widest range of options for investments. And then their cash rate is 4%, where a lot of these are like 1% or 0.1% or less. So these are, and I really like Fidelity because I can put my money in there every single year, and then I lean on my financial planner to help me figure out where I need to invest the money that's in there. So it's in alignment with all of the other investment vehicles that I'm leveraging as well. So a little bit about these HSAs. First of all, to be eligible to contribute to an HSA, you must be enrolled in an HSA eligible health insurance plan. Typically, the plans that are on the marketplace and most other plans are going to have HSA in the name of the plan, if it's HSA approved. You look at most of these marketplace plans, and the highest deductible, lowest cost bronze plan is oftentimes not an HSA approved plan. It does not meet the federal requirements to be HSA approved. So unless someone's in an HSA approved insurance policy, which means it does meet the specs set by the federal government, they're not able to make these contributions. So for 2025, the plan has to have at least a deductible of $1,650 and $3,300, whether it's individual or family. And the out-of-pocket maximums can't exceed $8,300 for individual and $16,600 for family coverage. In 2026, those numbers are bumping a little bit. Also, to contribute to an HSA, you must not be enrolled in a plan that is not HSA eligible. You can't have a flexible spending account. So if somebody's using a flexible spending account through their employer, an FSA, which is not as good as an HSA, in my opinion. With an FSA, a flexible spending account, that's typically offered by an employer. And it is, if you don't use the money in it, you lose that money at the end of the year. The beauty of an HSA is whatever money you put in, if you don't use it, you don't lose it. It just rolls over to the next year and keeps growing. You can't be enrolled in Medicare at this point. So once you're enrolled in any form of Medicare, even just free Medicare Part A at age 65, you can no longer make or receive contributions into a health savings account. Now, there is some legislation. I'm not bringing it up today, but I posted it on LinkedIn last week if you want to go check out my post from last week. But there is legislation in process right now that would allow people who are in Medicare to continue to contribute to health savings accounts. So that's kind of out there. And you can't be claimed as a dependent on someone else's tax return. So that's kind of the eligibility. Let's see here. Yep, we talked through this. We talked through that. You also have up until April 15th to make your contributions for the previous year. So I do have a lot of clients who they work in January, February, March to make their HSA contributions for the previous year. So I pulled a couple of different articles here that I thought were kind of neat about this. This particular article talks about here's the best way to use a health savings account, which offers a triple tax advantage. I'll tell you, my personal financial planners told me to max out my health savings account every year before I invest in a 401k, a SEP account, an IRA, 529 account for the kids' college. Do this first because it's the only vehicle where I get a triple tax advantage. And it says health savings accounts carry a three-pronged tax benefit: tax-free contributions, tax-free earnings, and tax-free withdrawals. They're available to people with high deductible plans. They can be a powerful way to build wealth and save for medical costs in old age. To the extent possible, savers should invest their HSA funds and to pay for out-of-pocket current health costs, and then you can keep receipts and reimburse yourself later. So there's various ways you can leverage these accounts. One way is you can set the money aside tax-free and then pull the money out as you incur the medical expenses each year. So you're kind of increasing the amount of money that's in there and then depleting it each year as medical expenses come up. That's a huge benefit because it's the only way you can pay your out-of-pocket medical expenses tax-free. But there's kind of a 201 version of HSA contributions, which is what I personally do, where I max out my health savings account every single year and I don't pull money from it. I just let it spin and grow and accumulate and invest. What I then do is I keep track of all of our family's out-of-pocket medical expenses. So vision, dental, deductibles, copays, whatever we have that are approved medical expenses, I keep track of those and track those expenses every single year. Because at any point down the road, I can reimburse myself out of the health savings account for accumulated accrued medical expenses. So I could wait 10 or 15 or 20 years and just reimburse myself in one fell swoop out of the HSA. The benefit of leaving the money in the health savings account is that I've got that money invested and it's growing completely tax-free because it's inside of that health savings account. So that's kind of next level HSA stuff. This was an article that I pulled that I thought was kind of interesting. It talked about getting triple tax benefits with a health savings account and avoid my $125,000 mistake. That's a big number. So this gentleman says that my biggest money mistake was not contributing to and investing in a health savings account 3 years earlier. This haunts me every fall during open enrollment season, which we might be in the midst of. I've calculated that this mistake will cost me $125,000 in tax-free investment growth when I'm 65. An HSA is a special purpose investment account that you become eligible for based on your health insurance plan. The account offers triple tax benefits when funds are used for qualified medical expenses. In the 3 years I could have contributed to one, but did not, the total contributions I could have made were around $9,000. Assuming 9,000 were to grow at 7% annualized rate for 40 years, this would have grown over to over $134,000, $125,000 net difference, all completely tax-free. So that's a really interesting case study of, somebody who was young and single and didn't contribute to an HSA and the long-term impact of what that money could have turned into. And obviously the benefits of compound interest with that. The last thing that I have here is just, there's a lot of different things that are IRS qualified medical expenses. You guys can see the list here. So obviously it's easy to understand medical expenses, right? Things that are covered by your health insurance are typically going to be reimbursable through an HSA account. But there's a lot of other things too. Acupuncture, artificial teeth, chiropractor, contact lenses, eyeglasses, fluoride treatments, feminine hygiene products, guide dogs, hearing aids and batteries. There's a ton of stuff that is typically not covered by traditional medical insurance that you can still write off, through that health savings account, even to include over-the-counter items. And they have a list of them here. So I gave you guys some links here that you can kind of check this out. There's a lot of resources available online. If you just Google Fidelity HSA, Fidelity has a ton of stuff that you can go through to just become a student of your business and better educated on this. There's also additional services and things with a letter of medical necessity, weight loss programs, massage treatment, CPR classes. There's a lot of different things. And then there are some ineligible expenses that are listed here too. So, routine OTC stuff, lotions and dental floss and deodorants and baby wipes and baby bottles and stuff like that are not reimbursable through the HSA. But, I think a lot of employers, to Cav's point earlier, a lot of employers who have traditional group insurance or are doing nothing, they're in a one or a two payer system. So you think about it, every one of us who has health insurance, we have two expenses that we're managing. We have the premium, so the cost of the insurance, and then we have the deductibles and out of pocket that we have alongside that. And then obviously the indirect costs that oftentimes can be covered with things like supplemental insurance. But I think about it from an employer or even an employee perspective, there's two pieces. There's the cost of the premium, and then there's deductibles and out of pockets. And honestly, in some situations, the cost of the premium might be the lesser of those two potential buckets of risk, right? Many of the plans that we're selling today have $9,000 to $10,000 deductibles and out-of-pocket maximums, and those are only going to climb. So you think about an employer who's offering group insurance, they're in a two-payer system. Them and their employee might be splitting the cost of the health insurance premium, and then nobody's helping with the deductibles and out-of-pockets. It's only the employee paying those costs, right? when you start embracing some of these ICHRA ideas or the individual marketplace ideas or these HSA ideas, what I like to tell employers is we can move this from a two-payer system where it's you and the employee sharing the cost to a three-payer system where it's you and the employee and the federal government sharing the cost. And we do that by bringing in the individual government subsidies that most people are eligible for, as long as they don't have access to group insurance through an employer platform. And so I think employers, that really resonates with employers, moving from a two-payer system, just you and your employee, to a three-payer system. And in that three-payer system, we can structure this however you want. Maybe you open the ICHRA, you reimburse $50 a month and know that no employee is going to take that because they're going to go get that government subsidy. And so the employee and the government are splitting the cost of the premium. And then you help pay their deductibles and out-of-pockets through the HSA contribution. I would say that particular model seems to ring the most true with the employers that I've worked with. And I think Cav appears to agree with that. I see his shiny head nodding. So, but I think that's a really, really viable way to do it. And I'd also say too, as an employer, you can offer an HSA contribution only if your employees agree to enroll in an HSA approved plan, but some of them may not. I've got an example. I have a veterinary clinic that I've helped here in Middlebury for many years, and they probably have 15 or 20 employees now that I've helped with all their insurance over the years. They don't have an ICHRA. They just bring me in to help. Each employee that they hire, we're hoping they had a loss of coverage in the last 60 days, so they have the qualifying event to get into a marketplace plan. What the employer does is she says, hey, if you enroll in an HSA approved plan, I'll put $200 a month into your health savings account. Well, I met with a new employee a couple of weeks ago, and this new employee was a single person making about $24,000 a year. After we did the math on everything, it did not make sense for her to enroll in an HSA approved insurance policy because she would have had a $7,250 deductible and out of pocket. She could have gotten that $200 a month from her employer in the HSA, and that plan would have cost her $0 after her subsidy. But for $3.98 a month, she could have a silver plan where the government was not only going to pay the majority of her premium, but was also going to fund her deductibles and out of pocket. So she had a very low deductible and out of pocket. I advised her for $4 a month, I think I'd forfeit the employer contribution into the HSA and just go with a non-HSA approved plan because that silver plan was so sweet from a coverage perspective. And she was perfectly okay with that. I mean, obviously she had the choice, but I think she ended up with a $1,750 deductible and out of pocket with no HSA contribution versus a $7,250 deductible and out of pocket with a $2,400 annual HSA contribution. So even when an employer offers it, their employees, it may not make sense for them to take advantage of it. But even talking to this gal, she was still appreciative that the employer was willing to do something, even though in her scenario, the employer was doing nothing and it benefited her in no way. But she was still thankful that the employer was willing to do that if she chose the right type of plan. So I think this just opens up doors and conversation once you start to understand these. I do want to continue these conversations in the coming weeks. We're not going to have ADT next week. And the following week, Steve's going to do some life insurance training as a follow-up to what Dallas Richens is doing next Tuesday. So we're going to focus on life insurance the next couple of weeks. But I do want to circle back and bring Savvy back in for a 201 training. So we will get that set up in the next couple of weeks here, and we'll continue to have these conversations. I think it's great. Though I give you guys kudos. Those of you that are out engaging with small business owners and starting to have these conversations, don't stop. There's a huge opportunity there, and you're getting your foot in the door on something I think really special. So, Cav, do you have anything else you'd like to add before we wrap things up?
No, not really. I mean, just again, as you get excited about going out there, try to be a little bit more strategic on looking for the people who don't have anything, because I just think it's going to be the easiest path. If you stumble across someone who has a group, okay, we'll try our best. But there's going to be some built-in, it's going to be tough. But again, if you can find someone who doesn't offer anything, if the only thing you get out of it is just by introducing yourself to that employer and he becomes a center of influence and a referral partner, it's worth walking in there and just introducing yourself. So that's all.
Agreed. So, well, hey guys, I'm going to let you go. We're 15 minutes over. I hope this was helpful and impactful today. We'll send out the recording. We'll send out Steve's slides. I'll send out my HSA slides so you can kind of review those. If you have additional questions or need to reach out to Cav or myself or your sales leader, feel free to do so. But thank you for being here today. I hope you all have a great week and a nice holiday weekend. And I look forward to seeing many of you next Tuesday for our life insurance training in Elkhart. Take care, everybody. See ya.